On this not-to-miss episode of We're No Damn Experts, Rebecca and Maudie visit with Duane Buchi from the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. Not only is he a park ranger and educational coordinator, he is an amazing storyteller.
Best damn podcast, the best damn town. You wanna get up, get ready to get down. With its big wide sky and the wild river Thames, if you wanna go, we can take you there to Great Falls, Montana.
Welcome to the greatest damn town in Montana, Great Falls. I'm Rebecca Ingham.
And I'm Maudie Hazard.
And
we're no damn experts.
To prove that point even further, I'm just going to do a little corrections corner before we kick into this episode from episode 8. Was that last time's episode? We talked a lot about skiing, being outside, doing winter stuff. If you're coming from sea level, don't go skiing on the first day. We had a ski patrol champion here in Great Falls send us an email to correct that because things don't go well for you on the mountain when you come from sea level and you decide to ski the first day here. So acclimate, and then you can go ski. For all the other things we screwed up in episode 8, please check out our show notes at visitgreatfallsmontana.org/podcast. And now we can get into our real episode.
So yes, we're here at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. And with us is a man who has taught me how to burn bison poop, who can set up a 14-foot teepee in about 30 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
And
you can do that.
And is here to tell us when Lewis and Clark ran out of whiskey on their expedition. So please welcome to the podcast, as a damn expert, park ranger and educational coordinator, Duane Buchi.
Thank you, Marty. It's good to have you here again. Looking forward to spending a little time with you.
And before we leave, I'd like to see you construct that teepee in 30 seconds.
In my dream. But she did make it happen virtually.
There we go. It's the magic of film. It wasn't a boomerang, but it was a time lapse, and it looks pretty cool. So, Duane, thank you for having us at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. Rebecca and I always tell our guests about it because a quarter of our visitors come to the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. And, you know, that's always that's the highlight of working here is you get to meet people not only from around Montana, not only from around the United States of America, but around the entire globe.
Yeah.
Been a little different this year, but certainly, yeah, that is a highlight of being able to work here and being able to share this story with just such a broad audience.
And, Duane, I'm going to remind you to talk into your mic. He's doing awesome. He's doing awesome.
She's going to correct us a lot.
I know. So, Duane, the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, it's the largest of its kind here in Great Falls, Montana. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a 25,000 square foot facility here. And, you know, there is a number of interpretive centers along the entire national trail that starts back there in St. Louis and goes all the way out to Astoria, Oregon, where the National Park Service has Fort Clatsop. But the thing that I always like to share with visitors that makes us a little different than most other places is the other interpretive centers that you visit along the way, they really focus on what occurred in that specific area, what went on, what happened, what physical evidence might still be remaining that visitors can take in and learn more about. And here at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, so when we talk about physical evidence, basically what we have is, you know, they journaled. They journaled, some of them on a daily basis. So, I mean, you know, there are more words written journaling the expedition of the core discovery than there are in the Bible. So there's a lot that we can go back and look at and understand. So why there's not the physical evidence right along here, except for when we read the journals, we see the falls of the Missouri that they were speaking to. We see only 4 of the 5 that they had to deal with. But we can see the landscape through their eyes, through their journal entries that we have here. So that's This center is going to tell for you, though, not just about the Great Portage around the Great Falls, but it starts at the very beginning. In fact, if you were in here in the lobby with me, right across the front lobby, it goes back to the Louisiana Purchase. And when this land was first purchased, when President Thomas Jefferson was running the country, and then the preparations that would take place, and they wanted to go and explore and see and lay claim to what they had just purchased here. So the exhibit journey, it begins. We've got a bust of President Jefferson in our lobby, so you can learn a little of his expectations. This had been on his mind for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. And here finally under the command of Captain Lewis, it's going to become a reality. He's excited about it. He's eager to see this go underway. And then as visitors go downstairs, at the very bottom of the stairs, as they go into the exhibit hall, you look down on the carpet, and there's these two blue ribbons of carpet coming together in front of you, forming a single blue ribbon going down the first hallway. And that's identifying for us, well, when the expedition began, it began at the confluence of the Mississippi and the Missouri River. Yeah. And that's where your experience with us begins. And then as you travel through, and you're going to travel the entire length of the expedition, so some 4,000 miles each way, except instead of taking 2 years, 4 months, and 10 days, you're going to be able to do it in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn about the natural history, about the American Indians that they had contact with, and about the experiences they had all along the way. So what makes this place different than the others? It tells the entire story with a special focus on what you all see behind me if you were here or able to watch the video, and that is the portage of our diorama with one of the 6 dugout canoes that they would portage that 18.25 miles around the Great Falls of Missouri.
So Duane's looking at me because I want to laugh. I'm going to give you 2 side notes. One, Rebecca, she summarizes the Louisiana Purchase and Lewis and Clark's expedition by President walks up to you and says, what do you say, Rebecca?
Hey, we just bought some land. We'd like you to go explore. We don't know how long it's going to take you. We don't know how big it is. We don't know what you're going to find, but here's some money and some rations, and good luck. And I always think, because we were here with the Berlin Airlift Veterans
I remember.
Association.
I worked that night.
Yeah. And in one of our pre-conference trips, I sat here with a 93-year-old veteran, and we stared at that dugout and that diorama, and he says to me, wonder how many fights there were along the way. I'm like, I wouldn't have gone. He goes, right. Yeah, that's a tough one, too. And he just sat there and hypothesized with me, but that whole thought process of getting asked to go on that expedition, bigger people than me, I'd have backed out a long time ago.
And then the second note I want to bring to life is I met Duane back in May 2020 this year, and I am filming him record the bison poop burning. And I preface it before we start recording, say, Duane, if you make a mistake, it's fine. We can start all over as many times as you want. We're here all day to get this right. And then Duane comes on camera and eloquently speaks about burning poop. Like, no crap, he is the expert. So you're going to notice this on this podcast, that he truly is the expert, because he talks about this day in and day out with visitors that are, from the country and internationally. So I kind of get dumbfounded when I listen to like you and Jeff. Jeff LaRock is he's a supervisor.
He's amazing.
Yes, when he talks about the Tale of 2 Portages or the medicine that was used on the expedition, I'm just like, how did you memorize or be able to regurgitate that pretty much easily? Yeah. So you're going to notice that on this podcast where I'm going to ask him a question. He's going to tell you the whole story, and you're just going to sit back and listen and forget you're on the podcast.
And if we forget to speak, it's only because we're enthralled with the story you're telling.
So when a visitor does come here, how long do you think they should spend?
We typically encourage folks to budget 2 hours of their time.
Okay.
While they're here. And that's in a normal year. We have 3 different films that are shared with the visiting public as part of your entrance fee. So we have a 28-minute documentary narrated by Ken Burns.
Oh, yes.
And
okay.
It's introductory to the expedition, covers the entire expedition. Then we have another 20-minute film that is called The Great Portage, and that really focuses on what occurred here in the area of the Great Falls. And then the final one that we show is one entitled The Medicine of Expedition. It's kind of based on Dr. Peck's book, Or Perish in the Attempt. And that one is 26 minutes long. So, if you budget 2 hours, that should give you time to take in at least one of those films and see the exhibit hall, or 2 of the films and a little less of the exhibit hall. But, we have had people that have come here and then they come up and they say, we're going to go to lunch. And they come back. And then they come up when we give the all call for we're getting ready to shut the doors, and then they ask what time we open in the morning. So,
well,
it's
especially
that whole spectrum.
during the weekend, during the summer months, you traditionally offer your demonstrations too, right?
Yeah, that's true. During the summertime, we are open 7 days a week, 9 hours a day, from 9 to 6, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And and we've got demonstrations going on, during a portion of that time. The exhibit hall is always open. We might have different venues that we bring up and temporarily share with the visiting public out here in our lobby. We've got tour groups that are coming through literally by the busload. I think pre-COVID we already had, and so this was in March. I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 bus groups that were already scheduled to come through. And they were going to be spending time. They were going to eat lunch here too. In fact, almost every bus group that was coming had worked with a local caterer in town to also have lunch in our resource center.
Wow. The amphitheater outside,
Yes.
do you do demonstrations there, or do people have lunch there too? What's that used for?
That's an awesome question. So up until this year, certainly it is a place that you can go and enjoy a meal, just enjoy the scenery of looking at the Missouri River. However, on a hot July afternoon, it is completely exposed, and you'll walk away fairly scorched.
Oh,
Sweaty and hot.
But just finished this project. I was going to say in October. You can see the support poles that will hold one of those shade sails, something like is down in Gibson Park.
okay.
So we have a large shade sail out there kind of behind the amphitheater where people could at least get a little respite from the sun or from the weather and still enjoy that same scenery. But we do demonstrations there in that amphitheater. We actually have a lot of weddings here. A lot of people don't realize we rent this facility under normal cases. And I think this is a correct statement, that we have had a wedding here every month of the year outside. Now, we have a lot of them inside too, but there have been some brave souls that I've watched them with, umbrellas and big heavy coats and everything else, and they're a little shorter than maybe normal weddings, but they still get it done.
Hey, it doesn't matter how long it is, as long as the end result is the same.
Yeah.
I do.
This weekend we had people dining outside, outdoor dining at one of our local restaurants, Tracy's Diner.
Oh, I've seen the little
Little.
heaters that
They're
they got.
big.
Yeah, they look like big canopies, I guess. Yes.
They're pretty big, and they kept us warm.
Yeah,
That was
a little chilly.
just a tad.
Was it well attended?
Well, they were forced to. It was part of our video shoot, so people will have something fun to look forward to. But
Yes.
we told them to come prepared with layers of clothes and gloves, and
Oh, that's great.
yeah, but it looked great.
Good.
So the demonstrations that you provide or offer, I have witnessed the bison burning poop one. That was with Kristen. Kristen, once again.
Oh, yes, the one that went back to Florida.
Yes.
Darn it, Kristen. I remember you had the flint and she easily struck it. Well, no, I shouldn't say easily. She struck it and created a fire, and that's the only thing she talked about for the rest of the day.
Happen. That's true. In fact, I think I told her I think we could hire her.
Well, please come back anyway. Any capacity, Kristen. We'll take you back in Montana. But it was really easy for her to do it, and she was so excited. And Kristen's in her, well, she's not a child. I don't want to say how old she is. So how many kids get to do that when they're here? Are they allowed to?
So they are. In fact, that is a very popular family activity that would come out there. So in a typical non-COVID year, I could have anywhere from 3 to 4 to 15 to 20 that would be out there with me.
Waiting.
There's a little more one-on-one if we can have the smaller groups, but yeah, it's not uncommon to have an entire family, and it's not uncommon for one of the children to come up and get the first spark long before anyone else can ever get that too. But it's a skill. It's a learned skill. It does not come naturally to very many. I assure you that.
My daughter will walk in the forest and strike two sticks together and expect to make fire. So I'm going to have to bring her here when she's a little bit older.
Absolutely.
But if you do get the one-on-one experience with Duane when he's building the fire, he's going to ask you questions.
I do like to ask questions.
It is
educational as well.
It's educational, but in a sense of like, should I say poop? Like, is that the answer? Like, am I dumb? And then it was the answer. It was
the answer.
Poop, because there's over 10,000 bison across the plains, and there was tons of poop for them to burn, and they're mainly grass-fed, so the poop doesn't smell that bad.
No. In fact, do you remember I related a little bit of, Lewis does document how it seasoned the food. Do you remember that? Imparted a bit of a spicy flavor, he would say.
Oh, I don't remember that. I do remember that they had to eat like something of the equivalent of like 5 to 8 pounds of beef a day.
Of meat a day. Yeah, whether that was bison or deer or antelope or...
The Corps had to eat that much meat a day?
Per person.
That's what they were consuming on a daily basis.
Well, look what they're bringing up.
I know.
I'm pointing to it.
Out in the wild.
Right.
I get it.
So I heard this. I want to know if this is true. We talked about Ken Burns. He did the PBS documentary for the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Yes.
But my husband was watching it, and he said, hey, I heard that they ran out of whiskey here in Great Falls. I'm like, yeah, we know that's a fact. July 4th, right?
It was on Independence Day.
But is it true that they only packed enough whiskey to get them further enough away that they weren't able to return?
Well, that's the urban legend that I ascribe.
I don't think that's an urban legend at all.
There's enough whiskey for you to think you're going to make it. And
Or
by the time they've come this far, you want to strike it on your own now? Yeah, I don't think that's a very likely prospect.
And I don't think anyone said, this is how much whiskey you're going to need for the entire expedition. No one knew.
Well, because they didn't know
what it was going to take or what they were going to see.
And they didn't know how many fights they were going to have along the way. So I'm assuming
falls they'd have to portage. Like nobody knew. They didn't send a drone beforehand and said, this should take you 10 miles a day, and then this is all you'd need. It's not.
No.
It wasn't that planned.
So, you said, if you want to strike it on your own. Do you know anything about John Colter?
Oh, so I know something about John Colter.
Well, I know.
He is my favorite character of the expedition.
Okay, tell us why. I'm gonna let you talk about him.
Because the guy, every time it seems like you hear something relating to John Colter, well, one, we really know very little about him.
Okay.
But what we do know is just like, how can that be possible?
That's what we mentioned in episode 4 of We're No Damn Experts when we talked about Yellowstone National Park.
Yes, and arguably he being the first one to discover the first white European Anglo-Saxon, to discover Yellowstone Park. Now, it's kind of interesting. We use that term Corps of Discovery. That was how they were described. But I always try and remind people, there had been generations upon generations that were here long before the Corps of Discovery arrived. It was no discovery as far as they were concerned. It was welcome to our neighborhood.
So what's
happening here for the last hundreds of years?
Yeah, that's right.
So what have you heard about John Colter that makes you think like this guy just wants the claim to fame? He's lying.
Well,
liar.
Definitely, he's the most noteworthy thing regarding John Colter. That if somebody knows who he is his famous flight from the Blackfeet near the Three Forks of the Missouri.
Oh, I know nothing about this.
You don't know anything about?
Is that the fight? The one where he?
Well, it's more of a flight than it is a fight. But I guess there is a little bit of a fight too. But yeah, so I'm going to tell the story.
Do it. We're listening. I'm ready.
The abridged version. So John Colter, member of the expedition, and he obviously, in my mind, he falls in love with this place. all the upper stretches of the Missouri River, just the whole lifestyle, the rugged wilderness and the adventure. And on the way back, when they're heading back to St. Louis, everybody's on their way home. They're going to get a paycheck. They're going to see all their friends, their family, their loved ones. Well, they get as far as Fort Mandan in North Dakota.
Okay.
And there's these two gentlemen that are coming up the Missouri River. And they're coming up to go trapping. The word is already starting to get out about all the beaver and all the richness of the land. And so here's these two trappers that are coming up. And, of course, Colter instantly is like, oh, my goodness, I don't think I'm ready to be over.
Oh.
And he comes to the captains, and he's asking to be released early. He wants to go with these guys.
Wants to stay.
And head back up the Missouri.
Oh.
And, the captains are kind of left in a bit of a quandary. They have a great respect for Colter. And
Okay.
he's certainly a valued member of the team, and he's shown that all throughout. But, they're still in Fort Mandan. They need to get all the way to St. Louis yet. And so the agreement finally is, all right, we're going to let you go as long as you secure the guarantee from the rest of the men that this is it. The rest of them aren't going. We'll let you go, but everybody else has to make sure that we get back.
Okay.
And so anyway, that was agreed. And they agreed to let him go. And in fact, they give him some powder and ball and some provision to be able to kind of help him get a jump start as he heads back into the wilderness. And so he doesn't even go home. He heads back upriver.
Okay, so that's how he's able to continue it. Because if I came home from this, I'm not going back out.
Well, you gotta wonder what's still left. Like, do my friends still remember me? It's not like you're tweeting about your expedition or hashtagging everything that's happening.
Many thought that they had probably died. It's been a couple of years, right?
I can imagine you end up back home, your wife's remarried. Like, I didn't know if you were coming back or not.
Child 3 and 4 don't resemble me, honey.
So it's also that the word traveling in a time when there's no technology to speak of that makes it easy to make a phone call home or get a letter written. I mean, there's a delay, but that's kind of cool that people are already starting to hear. And
absolutely, yeah, they were always starting to get that word. But yeah, travel was definitely a lot different. I like to use the word that they traveled by LPC. And then I always get the quizzical look. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm. What?
Are you talking about? And they're leather personnel carriers and moccasins.
Yeah. Okay.
Or your boots, or
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So long story short, he goes back up the river. He doesn't come back out for 4 more years to St. Louis. In fact, by the time he comes out,
Colter's
Captain Lewis is dead. And
my gosh.
He has to sue Lewis's estate to get his pay
I didn't.
for the expedition.
Oh my God.
Colter's my favorite note too. Okay.
But again, I haven't got to the good part. The good part was, so he had met up with one of his expedition buddies. They're trapping in the area where the Three Forks of the Missouri is today. They're trapping beaver together, thinking they're going to make it rich. Now, the problem is that is a really dangerous area to go into because that is the Blackfeet country. And so they had come up with this strategy that they would set and check their traps at night and then make sure that they got home before daybreak so that they could lie low and then, hopefully avoid being caught. Well, it had worked fairly well for a while, but this one day they're coming back and, they're a little late. Daybreak is coming. And John Potts is his partner. And they're in the canoe and they're going along, and then all of a sudden there's some kind of thundering. They can hear, it sounds like, is it a bunch of bison? What is it? There's just thundering hooves. And, going through the mind, what on earth? And then all of a sudden, it is played out there before them, and they are surrounded by Blackfeet Indians. And there's, at the upcoming bend, there's an Indian motioning for them to come to the shore. And Potts is like, we're not going to the shore. And Colter is like, we don't have any choice. I mean, we just got to stay cool and those are my words. and go over it. And so anyway, as they get up there, the way the story goes, they're getting out. Colter gets out. Potts, no, I'm not doing this. He pushes back, fires, kills one Indian, and instantly is riddled with arrows. Oh. And so now here's Colter standing there going, certainly I'm next. But he overhears a lot of discussion that he can't quite understand what's going on. And when it's all said and done, he is instructed to remove all of his clothes.
Okay.
And then he realizes that they're going to make a game of this. And he is told basically to run as fast as he can. And then they're going to give him a little bit of a head start, and then they're coming after him. So here he is with nothing but what he came into this world. And he's making it, he starts out probably a little slow at first. But then as soon as he hears the excitement as they begin to hoop and holler and rip their leggings off and get ready for a chase, he goes for all he's worth. And the way it goes is he's running as if his life depends on it, because it does. Okay. And he turns out to be a very fast runner.
Oh, congratulations, John.
Group. But there would be this one that stays with him. And not only does he stay with him, he begins to close that gap.
Okay.
And he's running so hard that his nose begins to bleed. So you can imagine what that would look like after a few hundred yards. Nosebleed, running as hard as he can, and you're sweaty and tired. And he realizes that, okay, I'm not going to outrun this guy. And so he suddenly stops and whirls around when he is like uber close. And his pursuer, a little startled at what is just happening, he ends up tripping, and he's carrying a spear. And as he trips, that spear drives into the ground, and the staff breaks off. And Colter, realizing my opportunity, grabs the point of the spear, thrusts it through him, and then takes off running again as fast as he can go. He gets to the river, to the Gallatin River, and he jumps in, and he's trying to, I can only imagine him thinking, what am I going to do next? Because they're coming still, and now they're going to be coming with a vengeance, because their game did not go like expected. And so he ends up getting underneath of a log jam, and where he's got just enough room to be able to get his head out of the water to breathe, but without being seen from above. And they eventually do come to the river. They comb up up and down both sides of the river looking for him. They never do come up with him. They finally leave. He crawls out. This probably took place in October.
Oh.
So think about what the weather would be like.
FYI, October in Montana, we've been here. It's cold. It can snow.
It does snow. It record snow.
So
it's where we get most of our accumulation.
Now remember, he has no clothing.
No.
He has no food. He has no weapons, nothing. He's got his intellect and his will. And so the next 11 days he spends traveling back to Fort Raymond on the Yellowstone River. Oh. And not recognizable by the time he gets back there. But he does succeed, and he does make it back.
Okay, so
Does
John...
he head home after that?
So that's what that's what I would certainly do.
Yeah.
But
He doesn't.
He doesn't.
No, of course not.
John is made for a reality TV show. If he existed today, you better believe he's going to be a star.
Yeah. No, he's a rugged individual. There's a few things in the journals written about him. He was hired as a hunter for the expedition.
Not a crazy man?
Occupation was a hunter for the expedition. He would have been considered one of those 9 young men from Kentucky, so he had no previous military experience.
Okay.
He answered that call of, hey, we're looking for a few men.
Hey, I got nothing better to do.
Yeah, and Lewis is the one that actually hired him or contracted him onto the expedition, and then they made him a private and tried to instill those military values into him, but
did it work? No.
So I will say this: on the 29th of March of 1805, he was court-martialed. So I guess it eventually worked, because I did tell you that they had a great respect for him in the end and provisioning with powder and lead and some other things before they turned him loose. But yeah, it didn't start out real well. But the interesting thing is about that court-martial, we know that he was court-martialed, but we don't know what happened. Nothing is said. He was still around afterwards. So again,
okay. Our bad.
It met the goal then.
There you go.
Changing behavior.
Dwayne's a retired chief master sergeant. So, sometimes discipline works, right?
Sometimes discipline
I guess it did in that case. So where in the center can we see John Colter's presence for the expedition, if any?
Well, it for sure when you get to the end and they list all of the payments that would be made to all the different members of the Corps discovering it's sad, but you'll also realize that Sacagawea, there was no recompense for all that she contributed. For York, there was no recompense for all that he contributed as well. But anyway, you will see his name listed there.
Okay.
But, he was, most people that I run into, if they know who John Colter is, they don't know that he was part of the expedition.
Oh.
He was a private. He was a hunter.
Okay.
It's not like he was one of the prominent figures of the expedition. No doubt he would become legend long after the expedition was over for feats, just like that story that I told you. And then the one, he was back up actually in the area of the Three Forks in 1810, leading another fur expedition up there to trap the rich rivers and streams, the watershed that was so rich in beaver. And in fact, George Drouillard, who was another member of the expedition, would be hacked and dismembered up there. He would narrowly escape with his life. And it would be at that point that he made a promise that to God, if you get me out of here, I'll never come back. And he did make it back to Missouri, and he never came back.
How long did he live? Do you know? What took this man off the face of the earth? I'm just curious.
I mentioned early that that he's a lot of mystery.
Okay.
And I mean, for a lot of years, it was thought that he died in 1812. We do know that he was a member of Nathan Boone's company.
Okay.
He as a ranger.
Okay.
But he died. The legend has it that he died of jaundice.
Okay.
But what really he died from? When he was in when he was in Boone's company, he wasn't discharged until the next spring. So he obviously didn't die in 1812. So the thought is that he died in May of 1813 because shortly after he was discharged from Boone's company. So, what did he come down with? He must have been healthy when he was enlisted into Boone's Rangers, and then something came up and not doing so well.
I think the story about John Colter just proves point of how exciting this history is.
Right.
Because we didn't even talk about the one that got away, the mural that is in downtown that depicts Lewis being chased by a bear.
Oh, right here in Great Falls?
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
So there's a mural downtown that has the story that on the banks of the Missouri River where the actual bear on the trail is located, the sculpture
West
of the
Bay
bear.
Park there.
Yep. And how there was a narrow miss
Yes.
of getting away from a bear, but we have a mural on the side of a building downtown for that.
And it's called The One That Got Away. And it's from the bear's perspective that Lewis is the one that got away. But he did get the buffalo that he shot. So
He did. Now, you know what happened with those, the backstory behind those buffalo, too?
in what sense? What capacity?
So I like to call that, that happened, or that all took place on the 14th of June of 1805.
So that's when he went hunting, right?
Well, that's when the 13th of June is when he discovered the Great Falls of the Missouri.
Okay.
So it is down at Ryan Dam.
Okay.
And so he had 4 others with him. And on the 14th, he kind of gave them some duties to do. And he went around to find that sweet spot to get back into the river. So they're going to portage around the one falls that they were expecting.
Just the one.
And then he ends up, he finds 4 more falls, travels nearly 21 river miles. He gets chased by that grizzly bear back into the river. So he shoots that bison. And then when he comes back down the river, because he kept going after he shot the bison. But when he comes back down the river, there's 3 more that are right in close proximity to the carcass, and they come charging at him.
Oh my God.
And they, at the last minute, they break away and they leave him unscathed. But so he's dealt with the grizzly bear now, with charging bison. He had another animal that he described as being tiger-like in appearance that he took a shot at. and it went into a burrow. What exactly it was, I mean, was it a bobcat? Was it a mountain lion? Was it a wolverine? It could have been any of those three. It's another one of those things that's kind of laid out differently from different scholars in pretty convincing fashion, and it's fun just to wonder, what was it? But nonetheless, all this has happened in a day. In fact, the very next morning, the morning of the 15th, when he wakes up, he had a rattlesnake coiled up next to him. So in a 24-hour period, he went from like the peak of the expedition, hey, we found the Great Falls of the Missouri, which the Arikara Indians had told him so much about. And then that next day, all of that other stuff unfolds in my world.
Goodbye.
What a nightmare.
No,
Well, this was in June, right?
It was in June. Yeah.
Okay, they still had whiskey. So
yeah, we're good. We have claimed, I think, a number of times on the podcast that the Lewis and Clark expedition spent the most time in any one location here in Great Falls to Portage the Falls. Did we lie about that? And how many days did it take them to Portage the Falls?
So with that is, we tell people they spent longer here than anywhere else on the trail.
So you lied too.
Except
Oh no.
Except,
when they winter quarter in North Dakota and out on the Pacific coast.
Well, that's not expediting or being part of the expedition. That's quartering.
that's vacationing.
That's
There you go.
that's
So no, that is true. Longer here than anywhere else on the trail. They were here for an entire month. Now the portage itself took 12 days. They made 4 trips to get the 6 dugout canoes, all their equipment and supplies, physically moved overland by hand, by, a feat of human endurance, 18 and a quarter miles from the lower portage to the upper portage camp. But, prior to that, they're doing reconnaissance. They map out. In fact, Clark, the cartographer on the expedition, he's going to map exactly the route that they're going to take. In fact, they use stakes and they flag it. While you're under that kind of a load moving forward, you always want to know where the next step is supposed to be, right? Because you don't want to be wasting steps,
Right.
not with what they're doing.
no. That's
So
why you got to eat all this meat.
The portage was mapped out, 7 segments that were mapped out and flagged, and they were exact, precise. In fact, Clark used a surveyor or a pole chain to make sure they had the distances exactly right for those 7 segments. And so the preparations, the actual portage, and then when they're all through, okay, so they've lost some cargo capacity because remember they had the 2 flat bottom pirogues as well as the 6 dugouts. So they have cached those just downstream from the Great Falls of the Missouri in 2 separate locations. But they need some more cargo capacity for what they've traded in. And then that iron boat, the experiment that you've heard about. So at the upper portage camp, that is where they decide, okay, this is a good place to use that. And they assemble that thing, and then that ends up summarily sinking. The experiment was a failure. I can't remember if I've ever told you why.
Probably because they didn't have the pine trees that needed the sap to create the glue to seal it together. What they thought was readily available in Missouri wasn't the same in Great Falls.
Very good. Right on.
she
Yep,
remembers some stuff.
Winter chicken
exactly
dinner.
right. Yeah, the primary ingredient was the pitch from evergreen trees.
Pitch, there we go. Evergreen, pine.
Not able to be found in any quantity sufficient for what they were trying to do. So they tried to come up with a suitable substitute of ash and tallow. It did not work. It floated for a couple of hours, but then it sank. And so now they've got to build 2 more dugout canoes. And so they had some other work that ended up keeping them here for an entire month. Longer than anywhere else on the expedition. So you're doing good.
We had some in-guest visitors earlier this summer, and they were asking about the Lewis and Clark expedition and the Interpretive Center. And I was able to rattle off some information that I heard from you and Jeff. And they're like, wow, you know so much. I'm like,
Yeah.
not at all. I'm repeating 1% of what they told me. You need to go. And I told them about the Visit Great Falls virtually website and how they can see these demonstrations. But they looked at them like, no, we want to go. And I'm like, I know,
great.
I do too. But we've been talking for almost 40 minutes and we have barely.
Didn't even scratch the surface.
Yikes.
No, at all. None.
Yeah.
So just one question, one more. You did mention that when Colter was being surrounded by the Blackfeet that they heard this sound and they didn't know where it was coming from. Earlier on in the expedition in Montana, the Lewis and Clark in their journals, they say something about a mysterious noise coming from the mountains. What was that noise?
Very good. What was that noise?
What
I get
is
asked
that?
that
What is the
question
noise?
a lot today,
Well,
still today.
Well, no,
We've only ever been asked that question one time.
Rebecca, tell about the phone call. It wasn't
that I know.
it wasn't a short phone call that Rebecca got.
He was way more knowledgeable about a heck of a lot of things than I was. He's like, but you gotta know a little bit about this. I'm like, I've never heard about this in my life, so I apologize. I said, so you can call to the Interpretive Center. And they'll have people that know stuff. I don't.
I have maybe we do get, I'm not going to say we get constant calls, but we get a few during the summer, 4 or 5 phone calls maybe that I've fielded, but probably have 4 or 5 people a month if I'm working out here. I didn't work out here much this summer, but it comes up. Yes, it is.
So what's the
legitimate.
question?
It's a good question. It's documented in the journals. In fact, on the 4th of July.
Well, what's the question?
When they ran out of whiskey. All of a sudden they started hearing noises.
Booming noises. Maybe that's a headache.
So what it is that apparently the way that what Lewis describes it in the journals, he's been hearing these reports of what sounds like artillery fire. And when he makes his journal entry, he talks about he had just heard some as well. And in his estimation, it sounds like artillery fire from a 6-pound cannon. So that would be a good sized gun at about 3 miles. That's what he likens it to in his own memory and how he records it in the journals. And then actually about a week and a half later, he records again that he apparently hears it once again. And this time he takes note that it's a clear blue sky. And then the guy's busy. The portage is going on right now, right? He does make a comment too about, if I had some leisure time, I'm sure I could get an answer to this.
But he didn't.
And figure out what it is.
Oh.
But we don't know that ever happened. So the next question is, so was there ever anyone else that had heard about this? Well, Lewis actually had been told about it from the Arikara and the Pawnee. They'd been heard about the sounds, the booming mountains. And, when we think of it, the Sun River that we know today, it was known as the Medicine River.
Okay.
And he talked about that sound coming from west of north, which is kind of where the Sun River goes into the Rocky Mountain front there. And they called it the Medicine River. And many times medicine would refer to those supernatural things that there wasn't quite an explanation for. I don't know. That was the source of the Medicine River. Maybe there was something to that. But nonetheless, so he'd been told about it. And in fact, whether he knew this or not, back in New Hampshire in the late 1700s, there had been a gentleman that also had been told about it in a particular set of mountains back there in the New England area.
So it's a reoccurring sound.
So here's another instance that had been documented actually about 20 years before Lewis was out here. And then we know today that there's documentation. The Black Hills, they've heard these mysterious noises. They've been reported not only by the first people that were there, but by many others that would come. John Jacob Astor, the Pacific Fur Company, when he comes out through here, through this area, he also documents it in his writings as well. And actually throughout the globe, there is reports of these mysterious noises. In fact, I wrote some of this down because I knew we were going to get together.
How did you know I was going to answer or ask you this question?
Talk about this, but
I sent him an email last week.
in Ontario, they were referred to as the Cornwall Thumps.
Oh.
In Scotland, it was the detonations of Comrie.
Oh.
In Italy,
Very Scottish.
I'm probably butchering this, but I'll do my best Italian here, the Baturia Marina. And then in Nova Scotia, they were just simply referred to as the sea farts.
Oh my God.
That's our people.
I thought it was
Nova Scotia, you're our people.
I thought it was going to be something like Loch Ness farts or something like that.
Keep it simple.
Like Nova Scotia, come visit us. We're waiting.
So I'm curious, do you have any ideas? Have you talked to anybody?
Duane, everything I know about the Lewis and Clark expedition is from you and Jeff. And I did
I'm good at making stuff up, but I have no bearing on what this could be. My thought was, when the gentleman had called me and asked about it, was tectonic plate movement. That's all I could come up with.
Okay.
Like, the mountains are growing, and there's that movement that makes the mountains bigger. That's my guess.
Certainly. Okay. So certainly.
I was going to think weather because,
You're the meteorologist.
but, with it being a blue, clear sky, but, lightning does travel 75 miles at night for sight. I wonder what the sound capacity of it could be if they couldn't see the storm over a ridge because, it could be obstructed. But
Absolutely.
I would like to think there's sea farts just echoing around the world continuously in a loop. So, Duane, we really want to thank you for hosting us. Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca.
Do you know what they are? What's your guess?
I'm not going to give you a definitive answer, but I'm going to give you what I believe is the answer.
Okay.
So the idea of earthquakes, weather events, certainly all those have come up. When we go up on the Rocky Mountain front, you go up underneath of Castle Reef, and there is huge boulders that are laying down there underneath of that big limestone precipice. No doubt when those fell sometime, certainly made a lot of noise. But I mean, how would they hear that down here? So there was a scientific study that thought, okay, maybe these are that primary wave, like when there's some kind of a seismic event, like when you have an earthquake near water and you get that seismic, the water wave.
Yeah.
Well, there's also an air wave. Oh. Okay, so maybe that could be, but one thing now, Helena, Montana, or Three Forks, Montana, there's a pretty major fault in that area, but not around here in the Great Falls. And when we hear all of the other places around the globe, it's not a constant that, it always happens near a fault line. So the next thing, and there was a book that was published in 2001.
You read it for the podcast?
Well, I read parts of it.
That's all you need.
It's called, the book is called The Civil War Acoustic Shadows.
Oh.
And it's written by Dr. Charles Ross. And in it, he documents that after the battle at Gaines Mill, so this is in the Civil War, near Richmond, Virginia, on June 27, 1862, that there were two observers who stood within 1.5 miles of all the action that was taking place on the battlefield. So they could see it, yet they couldn't hear a thing. However, during that same time, the noise of the battle was clearly heard up to 140 miles away. So now, you were talking about weather events, and think to yourself of like the Mansfield Theater.
Okay.
It's built for acoustic understanding.
Yeah,
there can be somebody that stands down on the corner of the stage, and you can be up in the top, and they can be whispering to themselves,
that's right.
and you can hear it really, really well. Weather, when we have inversions, right, where that cold air gets trapped underneath of the warm air up above. Sound travels pretty quickly through the warmer air, but eventually it's going to cool and then it would bend back down. I think that's a pretty logical explanation. We do know that happens with thunderclaps.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we can have thunder that occurs a long ways away, but where we're at, it could be a clear blue sky.
Wow. So do you think it's a subsidence inversion or radiation?
Well, I think...
As I sit here, just dumbfounded that question came out.
I'm going with my last explanation. I think that's what it is. I think it's when the acoustics are just right.
It would be a subsidence inversion. If the sky is blue, that means it's high pressure. So subsidence inversions keep weather from happening. That's the layman's term. I'm going to say it.
Okay.
But those inversions do exist on clear blue skies. But once that inversion is broken after diurnal heating, and that helps it break, that's when you get your winds to gush down to the surface.
This is where I'm giving the jelly donut look, because I've kind of known what we're talking about till now, but now I'm left out.
I checked out.
Okay, never mind. It's too technical.
But I'm getting there. I'm understanding.
When it gets windy and during the day, so as it warms up during the day between probably 11 to 5 p.m., depending on the season and sunset, sunrise, that's when you're going to get your wind gusts. And it's during a blue sky day. So before that time frame, before or while the inversion's setting up and in place, that could have
Sure.
a reason for it. But I think I just solved the mystery.
That's good. You know, another
I
thing.
like ghosts. Yeah, ghosts.
I like sea
Is there
farts. There we
anything
go.
wrong with just going, okay, we don't have to have the answer to everything?
No, because I want to know why John Colter died. I want to know what sea farts are. I need to know what took this man off the place there, because he seems like he had a heck of a time while he was here. I mean, because Colter's hell.
Yeah. Yellowstone
He
National Park.
he survived that. What kind of individual is he? And man, his name isn't even on this building. So
Did you hear how far that he went when he allegedly went when he discovered?
too far. I mean,
500 miles, all alone in the winter
wow.
with a pack.
He must just hated his home life. Did you?
He was an adventurer in the truest sense.
Yes, he was.
So the things we haven't touched on today, how many people were actually on the expedition, the design of the building, which is a really unique story. We haven't even talked about Seaman in his glory. So we've got many more episodes that we're going to get to do with Duane at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. Maybe not as lucky as we are today to have the whole space to ourselves.
Yeah, this is nice. This
It is so
perfect.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm giddy about it. I'm going to just hang out here the rest of the day.
I'm so excited for these future episodes, and we're going to have to make sure that everyone listens to this episode before we dive in, because so much more to tell. So much more.
It's a timeless story.
Yeah.
It
And
just never gets old.
No, and it's
You're
such,
always learning.
and it's awe-inspiring when you consider just the reality of what it took for these adventurers to have these experiences and have the foresight to journal daily. And I've been told for years, journal, it helps you grow professionally, and I still don't journal daily.
just check your email traffic. Who did I yell at today? Rebecca, the answer is me. All right, Duane. So thank you again for hosting us here at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. So during normal years, they're open 7 days a week from 9 to 5?
So the way during normal, not during COVID,
Right.
but during normal years, from Memorial Day until the end of September, we're open 7 days a week from 9 to 6.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
then from October until Memorial Day would be open Tuesday through Saturday from 9 to 5, Sunday noon to 5, and closed on Mondays.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll let Rebecca finish this off if you have anything else to add. But once again, I just really wanted to thank you for hosting us here and to diving into a little bit of the Lewis and Clark story, because
My pleasure.
we can't wait to come back.
Can't wait to
We're
have you back.
excited to come back, share more stories, and again, thank you everyone who's been listening. Marty told me that we're number 10 in the state of Montana.
Wow, that's
We don't get
congratulations.
to really
That's
do that on our
fantastic.
own, and certainly our family and friends are not the only reason that that's happening, but thank you, Mom, Dad.
And so after you listen to this episode, you should really check out our YouTube, because hopefully by then I'm going to have the small arms demonstration that
Thursday.
that Duane's going to do for us on Thursday. And I'll put that up on our social media channels so you can see that too. And also the other demonstrations that he filmed for us this summer. So once again,
Thank you for listening, and we can't wait to visit with you next week.
all right,
Bye.
bye.
We're No Damn Experts is the recorded claims from Great Falls, Montana, covering what you need to know about this amazing damn town. Damn, that felt good.
On the next episode of We're No Damn Experts, Rebecca and Marty finally talk about the River's Edge Trail, and we promise we'll air this episode. We're No Damn Experts was produced by Great Falls, Montana Tourism with original music by the best damn musician, Joel Corda.